All right, welcome. Hello, everyone. My name is Jerry, and I have a friend here with me.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Asad Afzal.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. Little bit, something wrong here, but overall, I think I should stop eating a lot of ice cream. So, uh, sitting home, eating
uh,
ice cream and drinking cold water, I think it has affected my throat for sure. So,
I if nothing else, you'll get better
awesome.
sooner.
Thank you. So, what's going on?
So, I will just go ahead and say what's going on right now is I'm running into a problem here, and the reason why
Mm-hmm.
I reach you out is that is to discuss scenario that I'm working on currently, and you'll see here what kind of solution we can come up with, and we can share with other people out there who might be facing the similar scenarios. So what is going on right now is I have what we're doing is we are migrating from SharePoint on premises to SharePoint online,
Mm-hmm.
and what we're doing, we're converting a lot of workflows into flows, Microsoft flows. And a lot of time, as you know, in workflow, we have a condition called, when the item is created or item is modified, we actually, specify that the condition of our
Mm-hmm.
workflow of running it. But when we go into a flow, when we specify that automated flow, what's going on is when I'm doing an update, we go into an infinite loop. That's one of the problem that I'm running into. And the second
Mm-hmm.
thing is that when we're doing a certain item, it adds all of the items. So I'm looking for a way, and also there's a way where we just do we have so many required fields, and we're doing an update item. It actually we have to specify all the fields. So that is also one of the criteria. I'm looking for a solution where it can be resolved with not that much of actions.
Sure. So, one thing that I want to mention today, Microsoft announced, maybe today, maybe this morning, that
Hmm.
Microsoft will be disabling the SharePoint 2010 workflows on SharePoint Online. So, um,
Okay.
that's a good one. So, it means that many people who have built many SharePoint 2010 workflows will be coming to us and say, hey, we want to convert them. So, I think the 1st August is when they will be disabling the 2010 workflow functionality on the new tenants, and on November 1st, they will be disabling 2010 workflows on the existing tenants. So I know that I've already sent an email to my customers, and I'm sure they will wake up and see, and they will come back. I'm already working on few projects, but I think Microsoft Power Automate will be another thing that they will consider now from 2010. So um, lots of work is coming.
I think this is why, and we also are moving towards Microsoft Flow. So just to get
Yep.
off the old workflows and kind of going into a new technology and explore, a Power Automate and expand from there
Hmm.
in online world instead of staying with outdated technology.
Sure. So basically, there are two ways. Basically, there are two ways that you can actually uh, do this step. One is that you use the basic logic using a condition, and the condition is that you add a column in your SharePoint list, and that column is a yes, no, or true, false, whatever you want to do, and then based on that value, you say, okay, if the value is yes, then do the update. And then in the update, you can actually set the value to no. In that case, the flow will run another time. It will run at least twice. And but in the second time, that because the value will be no, it will just skip. You can do this either using a SharePoint update item, or you can also, alternately, you can also use a call to HTTP service. Now, I think you didn't ask me, but I have a feeling that, let's say if you have a full-fledged SharePoint list which has 50 columns or 30 columns,
Yeah.
updating the columns using update item are not good. It's not a great experience. You
Right.
might have choices, you might have true, false, you might have other columns that you want to update. So if there are required columns, you will have to make sure that all of those required column values have to be passed.
I mean,
It
this is
means
one of
that,
the problems that I'm facing. I mean, right now is that I have a huge list and I have a multiple required columns, and then going
yes.
through doing it is very painful. Where I just need to update only one single field.
Yes.
And I think to your scenario that you just mentioned, a solution, having a yes and no field or anything.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, since users are already filling a lot of required columns, they're gonna be, they will have to keep and remember of triggering it. So we need to have a solution where the user might not need to know that there's a column that existed,
Oh
and
yes.
go ahead and
All right.
they can
So
update.
we can do that too. Actually, if you have a SharePoint modern list, we can customize that list using the Power apps. So we can customize that form, and when the form loads and user click on edit, we can actually set the default value to yes and hide that column as well. And when user click save, the value will be yes, and the flow will run and then move on as is. So let's go ahead and actually play with it and see how it goes.
Okay.
So let's actually do it hands-on rather than talking about it. So
Okay.
here's my one basic communication site. So let's go ahead and add actually a list here. So I'll go and I should have done add an app, but habit. I'll say new list, and we can name it flow update test or flow update would be fine. And I'll click create. And there is a title column. I will add one column here just to prove the point. I will add, let's say, a date column. I'll say, attendance, date, and I'll date like date a time, and also I'll make sure that it's required because we want to verify that the pain point that's there. And then I will add another column here. I'll call it. It will be a choice column, and I will call it update needed, and I'll have two values or two choices, yes and no. And I'll click save. There will be no default. So and now we have our list ready. We can add a new item if we want, but I think it's better if we do it after we create the flow so we can test it properly. So now the next thing I'll do, I'll actually log into Power Automate. So just for the clarity that the you create a flow in Power Automate. So many people say, I'm creating Microsoft Flow. Yes, you are creating a flow, but the name of the technology is Power Automate. All right, so let's go and click on create, and it will be an sorry, let me just go that and say it will be a trigger by a designated event, or you can actually also create it from a template, or you can say blank template. So what the one that we need to do is actually, you see that when you click on it, it actually doesn't do anything. So you still have to choose the type of flow that you have to create. It's just a link, but eventually you can still change it. So here we will pick up this value here when an item is created or modified. So when there is an item created,
Yeah.
and then there is item created and modified. So it makes sure that it runs for both. So I'll give it a name. I'll say, uh, do update flow, and I'll click on create. So now we have our trigger. When item is created and modified, we'll choose the list. So because I just recently worked on it, should come back automatically. Let's verify. I think it's a third one, the communication site. And the list that we just recently created, I think it's called flow update. And here you go. You can also choose the columns that you need, or you can leave it as is. The next thing we'll do, we'll click on new condition, and we'll add a condition control. And here I will pick up the value. So when you see the dynamic values, there's for the choices, there is the actual field and the actual value that user has selected. So we have to make sure that we pick the value, not the actual column. Otherwise, it will have that whole schema or choice collection to be clear. So and here I will say yes. So if it's yes, I want to make sure that I will be able to update. So if I click on add action again, I can click on update. I can find the update item, and you can see that it's exactly the same scenario. I'll choose the site, then I'll choose the list, and then I will go ahead and pick the ID. And the ID, of course, will come from when the item is modified from our trigger. And then it will pick up the title. So we'll not change the title. We'll say title. We'll pick it up from there. Sorry, and we'll say title. And then we can also do some minor concatenation, and we can pick some, let's say, created by or created or up, I think modified. Let's say modified. Modified mean date time value, and it will be a pretty odd kind of thing, but it will work. A unique value will come back. But you notice that the attendance date is still a red message, so we actually have to choose the same attendance date again. But you see the pain. Um, I was working on a list yesterday with Microsoft. We have over 100 columns on the list. Um, yes, it looks a lot, but we are doing some COVID-19 tracking, so we need tons of fields. Mostly our text boxes, drop downs, yes, no, and we are using an app for it, but it's still we still need it. So here you can see that I will um, what my action is that I will do the update, but then I'll set the update needed value to no. And when I save it, what this means is that this flow will only run when the update needed is yes. That's step number one. Very basic condition-based logic. We have been doing it in code for like many years, so it's basic. And
So if
now,
we,
what? Go
so
ahead.
Jerry, I'm stopping you here. So I think I'm gonna say, so if we don't put that condition there, so it's gonna run in a loop, right? So that's
Oh
that's
yeah,
one of
it
the
will.
thing,
It
right?
will
It will
keep running.
constantly run in the loop here. I think just to mention here is that whenever you first time you added an item, the flow runs twice. First is when you're doing an update, and the second time when the flow doesn't update, right? So I mean, this is the condition that we're specifying is to actually avoid that, and so that it
Yes.
doesn't do an two times
Yes.
update, right?
This
So
this will not fire the update, and of course the flow will complete. Now, as I said, there are two different approaches. I'm only discussing the first approach. There is a nicer approach that will avoid the second flow. If you are too much concerned about, you know, the flow quota, and let's say this list is used by thousands of people, and they are modifying all the time, then and the flow runs twice. Let's say you have 100,000 items in the list, and 50,000 or let's say 10,000 items are being modified every few hours. Then it is definitely not a good solution. But we can talk about it maybe on another video. But um, in this one, I'm thinking basic, right? So any I'm not thinking about being, trying to create a complex solution. So I'm just looking at the basic solution. So now I click save, and I basically click on test, so I can actually see when the flow runs, and I click on save and test. So now it's now waiting for me to actually trigger the action. So I'll go back to the list, and I click on new, and of course I'll add a title. I said my first item. I'll add attendance date, and I will choose updated needed yes, and that's it. I'll click save, and when I click save, you can see that if we go back to our flow, which is waiting for that trigger to fire any second now, and you can see that the flow runs successfully. So now if we go click inside, this is our item. You can see item number one, and that's what we created it. And if I go back to the my condition, and you can see that the input is true, and in the yes part, I now see that the update item is called, and the title became my first item dash that, and then the state is exactly the same, but update needed is now no. So now the flow is now running. So I'll go back to the list first. You can see that the update has happened. Update value is no. It means flow second has run completed. So let's go back. And now if you go back, you see that it's actually run again. There is a second flow. If I click on it, it will actually go inside, and you can see that the flow completed successfully, but the value is false. So there is a small X next to the update item. It means that condition has never executed.
mm,
So that's the way that you handle it basically. Now, before I jump into the discussion of what will you do if you have to update, let's say, 100 columns, um, and there are some things in there that you will have to. There's a problem in that flow that I just created. I'll show you later. But before I do that, how will you hide this column from an end user perspective. End user don't want to change it all the time. He already have 50
Right.
columns, right? So to hide this, we'll have to customize this form using Power Apps. So we'll click on Customize Forms, and then the form will, or the list will open in the Power Apps customizations. All right. So now the once the form loads, you can see that this looks like a standard SharePoint form, nothing new, but it is the recommended and the the new approach of modifying forms because Microsoft has disabled custom forms using SharePoint Designer. The only option for you now is to use the Power Apps. Now you can see that we have the all the columns here. You can make any changes to it if you want to make beautiful. People wants to have a header on top. You can add it using the label. In fact, if we can do it in the end when we have time. So, but the only thing I need to do is I want to make sure that when the form loads in the edit screen or in the view screen, I want to make sure that the value of no should be converted to yes automatically. Now, if the user does not save the form, the value will still say no. But if a user actually clicks save, the value will be saved as yes. So it's very, very simple. You simply select that control. Next thing you need to do is make sure that you unlock the properties of your uh, drop down. You can name it if you want to change it. And you search for a property called default. So you see there are two. There's a default and there's default selected items. Default selected items mean whatever values you want to do. So default mean that it's coming from the data source. So right now you see that when I open the form, it's coming as no because it's saved in the list as no. What if I want to change it? Oh, it's very simple. You have to pass these values as array. So you have to use the brackets and then in there square brackets in my language, and then in here you can provide the values. So you can actually pass one value or two, but because yes is the first, it will use as default. So now that you can see I have both, it doesn't matter because I'm specifying it as yes. But you still don't want the person to change it, although yes, no is coming from the form. What you have to do is you have to select the field, and then in that field, that you have to find another property called visible. And the visible property, sorry, I have to select the card, not the field. And then in the visible property, I have to make sure that the visible is false. So as soon as I set it to false, you see that the form has the column is hidden. So now the value is yes by default and it's hidden. So now if I go back and actually play it, you can see that the column is not there. It's gone. But we can't save it because it's just a preview. So I'll just go back and we don't have a button. We don't want to add a button because it's a SharePoint out of the box form. So I'll save it. Might take a second and then I'll publish it. Now the form is published. So I can click on this link and you see that I came right into it. Um, and I click on the form. Sometimes when you open Power Apps and you may publish a form, the form might not work the first time. So let's click on it and I'll show you. So what I have a habit that I do Control F5. But right now, because I opened the page as a fresh page, it basically you see that the column is not here. So before I do that, I want to validate that on this page there are only two flows. If there is a third flow, then the whole logic is bad. So now if I go back to my Power App, I click on Edit, or sorry, my form, and I make a change to it. I'll say second update to my item, and then I click Save, and you see that still the value is not there. So I click on Save, and if you notice that update needed value is now yes, and as soon as it's yes, if I go back to my flows and refresh, it still hasn't run yet, but it will anytime soon, any second now. We can wait for that this is always embarrassing part that you don't know exactly when the flow will run. So there you go.
There you
So
go.
the flow ran, yeah, 2 seconds. It's 2 seconds of Microsoft or 2 seconds of computer or the server, but it ran, and you can see that item was modified and the status is true. It means the item was modified with update needed, yes. And then you can see that second item of the item and the date time is merged, and the value is now set back to um, no. If I go back here, you can see that right as soon as I went back, it updated the pay value, and the second update is there, and the value is there. Now, if I go back and refresh, we should see the fourth instance of the flow, or the second instance in this case, uh, run with the value false. So that's the basic way. Now, you will say, hey, Jerry, what if I don't need this column here,
Mhm.
right? So answer is simple. Go to the view and simply hide it from the
Right.
view, right?
Yeah.
So, this is the way that you don't want that column, but you know that your functionality is working. How
Mhm.
how's it? Is it any question, any concerns?
I think I'm good on this one here. So I would like to know the second approach that we were talking about.
Yeah, I
Where
think you want it because it's a difficult approach, so you want to hear the difficult approach. All right. So let's first do one thing. Let's go back to our flow, and basically I'll just turn it off, and we'll go back to our flow. Now, the other approach that we can use is that we can actually save as, you know, when there is a save as, why not do? And I'll call it HTTP, or I'll call it REST. So I'll click save. So I created another instance of same flow, and I'll actually go back, and only thing I need to do in this case. So let me tell you the scenario. So as I said earlier, that when we use update item requires that we have to specify all the columns. But let me tell you the problem. The problem is right here. Imagine you have 10 choices, and
right.
you know choices technically, if you look at choice column. So imagine I have a column called customer name, and I have to select customer in the drop down. Here, the values will be shown as values, not as choices. So what if want to assign a dynamic value?
So why don't we do one thing, Jerry? Why don't we go ahead and create an additional column that is choice column so that we can really visualize it in terms of having more feel and how it does affect that update.
All right.
What do you think?
So okay. So let's go and add a choice,
And we
and
can just use maybe a
just call
color
it company. Let's say
company
company.
or a color or any
Yeah.
color or
Yeah.
whatever you want to.
Yeah. Let's call it color. Um, and we can name it. Let's say
Red,
blue,
blue,
red,
green.
yellow, orange, black. Life matter. All right. So I click and save. All right. And I go back, and the form will not open. The values will not come back until I refresh the flow. I can go back and I can edit again. And this will force the schema to be updated. And if I go back, you can see the color values here. But you notice that when I come in here, um, I don't have the option of dynamic value. You know, when I update the value, let's say user selected black. All right. When user selected black, we should have an option saying whatever the value that user selected, but it doesn't. Just like attendance date, I said whatever the attendance date is, it passes on. Then whatever the title is, pass it on. But for drop downs, it says either yes or no. If it's a yes no, it's actually yes no. But for black or color, it's actually showing me the values. Can I say add a customer value? So yes, you can. So I can say um, color value.
Value.
So you have to do this for other 60 columns. Can you do that? You'll have to do it. It will be painful. What if you want to update only one? So in
Yeah.
that case, um, I can't show you 60 columns here. We'll work on this one, but we want to make sure that we want to set these values, um, only one value rather than. So we'll make sure that using our REST call, we update the color from whatever color user selected to another color. So if users pick, uh, orange, we want to make it red. Or if choose black, we want to choose green. We are not adding any condition in there, but we'll choose a different color. So now,
Just we don't we can just update the color to red and then see, from our HTTP request just to change this choice value to red and then leave everything else.
yeah,
And we
sure,
don't have to set everything else.
sure, absolutely. So we can go back to it, and we don't have to worry about. And color value is not required. You see that I did not add it as a required. So actually, I can leave it empty. And if I leave it empty, it will actually reset it to empty because it doesn't have a value. So this is, you have to be careful on this view that how many field will modify. So there are lots of issues with this process. We'll just close it. So what we have to do in this case is that I don't want to use update item. In fact, I will use another action called call an HTTP service. So you can simply say HTTP, and it says send an HTTP request to SharePoint. So the name I used was actually how we used to say it in the SharePoint Visual Studio workflows, call an HTTP service, but its name is send an HTTP request to SharePoint, to be clear. Now here, almost most scenarios are the same. So I will be able to choose the same site. You can, so there is a way that you can actually, you don't have to worry about passing these values one by one. Optimization is that you can actually create a variable right on top and fix the set the value to the site URL, and then you can reuse it. In that situation, you will not have to set site URLs again and again and again. So, but again, many people do that differently. It's just a way of doing it. So now the next thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we um, call the service. So the service, our action is that we want to post that our SharePoint list. So the method that I've used in the rest is either get, put, post, patch, delete. So we'll use post. That will be our function. And then we'll have to create a URL. So I'll show you how to create that. So basically, this is our SharePoint list. If I go back here to the communication side, um, one thing you can do is, if you want, you can actually install an extension. So I'm using right now, um, let's say, I think they're called add-ons or extensions right here. And it's called the HTTP REST, or let me see the name. I think it,
Is
let's
the
open.
HTTPS everywhere?
No, not HTTP. I remember the name. It's called REST. Just another uh, REST. Hold on, I'm opening my Chrome to actually remember the name. Yet another REST. If it's opening, so its name, the name in the Chrome is yet another REST client. But if I just search for REST client, it will actually will find it. So if I the bad thing is that I use uh, you know um, the Firefox for this, but yet another REST client is the one that you can use to actually write it. But for now, for time saving, let's do it in the browser. It's the same thing. So I'll grab the site URL, then I say slash underscore API slash web slash lists slash get by title. And in there, I'll use a single quote or double quote, and I'll give it flow update. I think that's the name we give. And to verify that it's working, I will actually do slash. Hold on. I clicked on that drop down. All right, went away. Now, if I press enter, you see it's trying to download that list in XML. So I can actually save it. Let me save it, and I can actually open it in my where is my up downloads? I think it's right here. So I'll click on open. I'll say Notepad, and you can. I'm not sharing that screen, but it basically open all of the XML. So that's why using um, Chrome would have been much nicer because you can actually see the XML in the browser. And I have another extension that I use. It's called WalkMe extension, and it basically shows the values pretty nicely. All right, so what we have to do is we have to grab that URL and we need to go back to our flow. So that's the URL of our list. So the only thing we need to do is slash items, and it means that it will get those items in a collection. Now we'll come back here, grab the path. I'll say this is all the items. Go back to my flow and paste that, all of it. No, not all of it. Only the piece that's extra because we have the site address on the top.
on the top, right?
The next we need to do is we need to add the headers. So yeah, or you can click on these to actually add them. So first is content type, and it will be application verbose. OData is people verbose. And then we have an if match. So this is where we'll add these are the like required for, this is like the headers that are required for a post operation. Let me fill all of them, and then X HTTP method, and we'll say merge. Merge mean, in the basic sense, mean updating one or more columns of a SharePoint list. And the last, and let's fill out the values, application slash JSON colon verbose OData equal verbose. Technically, you don't have to say verbose. We do verbose so that we can see the output in detail. There is also another option called OData equal um, uh, metadata. So it's smaller. The output is pretty small. All right. And then in the body, we will have to create our metadata just like we do it in JavaScript or any REST API. So we'll have two brackets. A little bit painful, I think, for anybody who doesn't have lots of developer background, but something that you know it's not something that you will have to do all the time. You can just do it once and then copy paste it. So now we'll pass our properties. Here we will do the properties. So now in the metadata, there's a trick, and that's where I wanted to show the the XML. If I show you here, actually, let me just stop sharing for now and share that notepad file that I was talking. So I'll share. So you see here, if you are you seeing the notepad?
Yep, I can see it.
So if the notepad, there is a property there for the list called um, sp.data dot
Panel, list
and
name.
then whatever the name of that list. So if the name is flow, this is the item of the what we call the identity name.
Mm-hmm.
This is the entity name of the SharePoint list that is created automatically when the list is created. So if you remember, there is a concept that when you create a list, make sure you don't create it with the spaces in it.
Yeah, I was gonna say
So
that.
that's why whenever you create it, um, when I don't use space in the first time, but this is something that um, you have to get used to. Uh, Let me see sp.data dot flow update item. But there is also another entity that will be look like. Um, Let me see. SP.data. That's the only one. I wanted to make sure that I copy that value. Oops. I clicked again. All right. So the name is a little confusing for me as well. Why, you know why I got confused with it? That because it's have the word update in it. So
Okay, this
because
item, yeah,
update is the name of my list. So
yeah.
I got a little confused on the name. All right. So here, this is the name that I need. So I'll go back and there's my teams and I share the screen again. All right. Now I'm sharing again. Let me know when you can see it. Can you see my screen now?
Yes,
All
I
right.
can see
So
it.
here I have to provide that body. So body is that you have to provide metadata and you have to tell the REST service exactly what type of item it is. So in the same way, the format is that you can use spaces all you want. You can put spaces in advance, um, and to make it a little bit pretty. You can also use some prettify thing. So we'll say type. It should be in single quote, and then you put colon. It's a JSON, so it's a little tricky, but
Mm-hmm.
then you have to put space to make it. There's a space in there, and then with the value. So this is where we are providing our type, and then when you say comma, it means I'm now providing another. Um, um, this is where I'm now providing the column values. Now I can actually do it in this format. Let me put it like this: single quote, then single quote, single quote. So it's value, key value. And then it should not be comma, it should be colon. So it's like this. I'll say color, and I'll say, I hope I don't have a third one. So it's second only. So I'll say
Mm-hmm.
black. So what I did now is that I said that I want this REST service to actually update the item in the in the flow update list, and then set the color to black. So this is basically any column name. The tricky thing, if you have created these columns using the modern UI, you should be happy because modern UI automatically replace the spaces and merge them together. So if you use first
Okay.
space name, it always first name. But if you use the classic UI, the space is represented by, %x00.
Mm-hmm.
So you can actually use another command that I used here. If I go back to my, if it's still there. Yes. So instead of using items, use fields. So if you use fields and says dollar question mark dollar select equal, and you say title and then internal name. Sorry, I think I have dollar select. I'm not sure why it says, but this is the command that I use. Let me see if I can get only title. Let me see if this is working. Unauthorized exception. No, that should not be the case. Let me see if that one has it. Yeah, it should be slash fields, but maybe F capital, but I'll see. Fields. But I don't know what's happening, but normally, I'll in the end, I will actually do it in Chrome and I'll show you. But anyway, right now it's embarrassing. It's not working in this browser. But it's the fields and then select title ID. I do it all the time that I actually download it in the notepad and then reuse it. But for now, let's get back to our main topic. So here, I set the value to black. My rest of the logic remain the same. Let's verify that we have a post function, and then we have underscore API fab list get by title flow update. It's with the space and then items. and then content type application JSON, OData verbose. If match means asterisk, and it's a merge. And it will basically update the value to whatever value we have specified. But I see that there is an issue. Can you tell me what I did wrong?
So I think what I was going to ask you is that don't you have to specify ID, like which ID we are
Yeah.
doing?
Yes, that's exactly what I was about to say. That in that bracket that I actually left in there, I I I added it because I knew that I had to do it. I didn't do it here, but in the actual world, if I say slash items and I say 0 or 1, it will actually get the item by ID. Every first item is always 1, but for now it's not working, so you can consider it as my embarrassment for now. But here I will not type 1. I will say
Okay.
whatever the ID is.
IDs, yeah.
Yeah, so be careful on this. Make sure your mouse, you click inside. Don't believe exactly where you are until you click inside and then pick the ID. That's very important. Don't Many times we click somewhere and then the when you insert it, it goes somewhere else, and we don't. If our flow is large, we'll never know where it goes until we run it and it breaks.
Hmm.
So now our HTTP service part is done. So now we'll run it. So to run it, this time we'll not um, run it from the. We'll save it first.
And you have to turn it on.
Yeah, we have to go back and turn it on. It's always confused me. Let's click save and basically do go back, and we'll ask again. So in the end, we have to just say okay and say turn on. And now, because if I go back and click on test, and I can't use any browser because I just never ran it. So I'll go back to my SharePoint list and I click on edit. And basically, I will just go back to my flow and click test. I will perform the trigger and click test because it could be that we made a mistake. So we'll want to debug it. If I click on this, I can click on edit and oh, so it looks like I'm signed out. So there is
This is
something
why
that
it was
was
giving
scary.
it was
Yeah,
giving
there's a,
access denied error.
I don't know how it happened, but it's you see now the
There you
file
go.
down.
Yeah,
Like,
there you go. It's
I'm
working
in
now.
the browser and it just signed me out. So and I'm updating the flow. So now that the update has completed and the value of color is empty, so let's go back and wait for the flow to actually run. Come on, flow. Come on. Just keep on moving a little bit. I don't want to go away from it because if as soon as I'll go away, it will run. So let's give it another few seconds. So let's go back and show you that piece if I while it's running. So I'll say slash fields slash question mark dollar select equal title, and you can see that it's downloading. I'll show you it in Chrome in a nicer way. So I have no idea why this is not running. I have no option other than go back and refresh and see if something comes up.
No.
Uh, I think I updated the item. I don't want to
So
confuse it, but
I
let's
think let's do it one more
click
time.
on edit. And I
But
think
third
what
update.
first thing,
Let's see.
the best thing we should do is we should add that column back, the column that modified needed, update needed, so that it is that, so that we can see the values. Yes,
Yeah.
so values no, it means I never saved it. So I click on edit and I say update 3. I click save. Now the value is updated, and this time we have no other option to actually wait for it to run. Come on. Now this is where we have to just wait, and sometimes it runs like right away, and
Yeah.
sometimes it just doesn't. So the flow is on. There you go, and it succeeded successfully.
Yeah.
So without looking at it, if I go back to my list, I will have a value of the color. So if I go back and you see that the value is now color is black.
Okay, so let's do one thing here. So can you create a new item? And if you do a new item and then don't specify the color.
Okay, sure. Let's do that. I click on new item, say second item in list without the color, and I'll pick a date. And I click OK, and I click save. And you see that the color is black, empty, blank, and then the flow is there. If I go back to my flow, see it should have run twice. Now I will have a third one anytime soon.
So here if you notice something, the workflow two workflow ran on a separate not together but separate instance.
Yeah, so let's click on it and see exactly which one it is. So if I go back here, the
Which is
status is
true.
true, and it did the update, and then um, this is item one.
Okay.
And if I
So the
go back
what is the
and you see that, I
this
think
one? Yeah.
this is the one, right?
Yeah.
So I think I forgot something, and I think now our flow is in complete loop.
Yes, that's I was gonna bring that up because we
We
are not
definitely
doing.
forgot something. All right. So now we our flow is destroyed. So the way we go back is actually go to the condition, come back here, and in here we put
I,
a
I,
comma.
yeah, I think I was gonna bring it up here. The first thing to show is that we have one column and how to update a single field here. Now, if you
Yep.
want to add a multiple field update, so this is how they will modify, add the value of the column here,
Oh yes.
in
So we'll
format. So I think
come
that's
back here, put a comma, and we'll say I know that the name of the column is update needed. So the this is another trick. If you want to get the internal name, you can click on sort ascending and just come back here and double click on sort field and grab the name from it. That's it. Go back to your flow and basically says in the single code the name of the column, then colon, and then you say no. Because what happened now is that we messed it up and we never specified this column. Our flow is in the loop because even using HTTP service, um, the value is yes. So currently our list is being bombarded by the all the updates. That's why we see so many flows. So we will not be able to test this
can you
flow.
can you go back? Can you go back and show the
Yeah,
so we
sure.
can
So if I go
show
back, you will see
everyone?
that
You
so
see
many
here,
flows
it's
are
constantly running in a loop. So
yes.
because of that
They
thing,
will
so
stop because we have the flow saved. Now, if I go back and refresh, I hope that one of the last flow, which ran 15 seconds ago, will show the value to be false. Right now, it's still true, but I hope it stops anytime soon. 7 seconds ago, is that the one? Right here you
yeah,
go.
there you go.
So
False.
as soon as I set the value to no, so just to verify our logic that if you don't have that column value that is blocking the running of flow, it will always go in a loop. Now, if I go back to my item, you can see that value is black there and the value update column is no. Just to verify here, one last time, we don't have any event. Let's refresh it to confirm. 42
Oh,
seconds ago, the
yeah.
last flow ran. So if I go back to my item and I'll say item 4, choose a date as 15th, and I click save, no color specified, and the update needed is yes. And now if I go back to my flow, you can see that 42 seconds ago, the last flow ran. If I click on, I hope there was a refresh button right here, but I can click on all runs, and you can see that this was run 1 minute ago with 107. So now it's 108. So we will have, let's click on it and see what item is it. You see, this is the false condition one, the old one. If I go back now, here you
There you
go,
go.
6 seconds
Yeah.
ago. So 6 seconds ago, now this flow just completed with true and also update the two columns. So again, for anybody who wants to see, this is the output. You see that the values are being specified. This is the header values and the actual function. Now, let's say if you have to reuse it, it's very simple. Make sure you have the flow open in the same window where you are designing another flow. All you need to do is click edit and click on this button and say copy to my clipboard. If your other flow you're designing in the same window, you can actually paste it again, just like that. Click on
Okay.
new, my clipboard. Um, Not here. I think I copied the condition. So here, copy the clipboard, and then you add an action, clipboard. Here you go. If I paste it again, it will paste it exactly like that. So you can paste these values across the flows. And you can see that I copied the whole condition, but eventually I don't think you need to do that. But let me just delete it, click OK, and go back. And you can see that after 45, 48 seconds, no other flow is running. There's no loop, and the flow was completed successfully. So we verified two things. We use the out of the box update item. If you have smaller list, go ahead and use it. Nothing wrong with it. If you have large list, then use send an HTTP request to SharePoint action. It will definitely help you because it will reduce the payload. Your SharePoint site will work better because you will be updating only the columns that you really need to update.
Yeah,
Uh,
but we do need to have a way of handling the loop. So that is there. So we have to handle the looping of the update item which is running around it. So I think this covers the
this covers
the
the
big
basic.
scenario.
But
The
before I
basic scenario.
close, I want to say one thing. There is another way which I haven't done. There is a blog from Mikhail Svensson, who's a ex Microsoft MVP, the former MVP, and Microsoft now. Um, he has written an article that uses the REST API, but behind the scenes, where you actually call the HTTP service um, and use um, the endpoint that Microsoft uses. So actually, you're making a call to REST, but you will be passing the values as a function to an internal Microsoft service. The body will be different. The body will not be JSON. The body will be REST. And I can only say that based on the article, it says that will not fire a second flow. Now
Okay.
I haven't done it, so I can't say
So
because I think. Uh,
we can do in the second video. We can make a second, call
Sure.
and we
I
can
think
try
it's
it out,
fine. If we can
and then
get another time, we can definitely
we
try
can
that.
try that scenario
Yep.
here. So thank you very much, Jerry, for answering the question. Clarifying the scenario, and I hope it helps other
Sure.
people out
Um,
there,
okay.
with the scenario. So I think thanks a lot again, and take care.
All right. Take care, and we'll meet again.
We'll meet again. Bye.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.